everybody, and welcome back to Melanin Minds, a show where we are highlighting Black women and femmes in the comic book and manga space. I'm your host, Natasha, and to whichever side is the correct side today,
Hi, I'm Ty. What's going on, everybody?
yes,
Yes.
oof, in another great episode today. You look tired.
That actually hurts me because I truly did everything in my power to not look tired. I mean, I really did, which is crazy that you clocked that because I am so tired.
I think I just
I didn't you probably do, but I didn't get great sleep. I did in fact wake up on the wrong side of the bed. So I was just like pretty groggy. Then I got up and I was like, it will make me feel better if I play in makeup. So I was like, I'll put on a little face and maybe I'll film some content. Maybe I'll be a good content creator or whatever. And then I end up just sitting in front of the TV and eating chips. But that's just that, that's just how it is. But I did
I'm
try.
with the TV and the chips. The makeup, the face is facing.
Thank
The
you, thank
eyeliner
you,
is lining.
thank you, thank
Okay, it's
you,
all
thank
doing what
you,
it's supposed to do. It's giving everything. Okay, the blush is blushing. Like,
thank
so
you,
you did
thank
do that.
you, thank you, thank you. I like to occasionally I play in makeup now. You know, I was there was a moment where I was like, "Ooh, we just got to trust the process. You started this. You can't wipe this off, but you did start this. You don't have to continue." And I was like, you know what? You know what, friend? We gonna roll through it. It's just a little makeup. That's what face wash is for. But I did try to feel a little better. I am excited though. I don't know if you know. My two hyperfixations are hot women in comics.
Yeah.
And two of the hottest women in comics recently Image announced that Vampirella
Oh
and
yes, and
Witchblade
Witchblade.
are doing
Yes.
a crossover. Now, the folks in the comments are like, "Oh, this ain't their first crossover." Well, it's the first crossover I'm aware of, in which case I'm very excited. I haven't really been buying a whole lot of single issues for comics, but I'm gonna have to go ahead and go to my LCS and get some floppies because I need that expeditiously. That was a nice little wake up this morning. So I'm
It's
feeling
fair.
okay right now.
It's fair. I missed the last crossover. I never got it, so I don't care. It's the first for me.
Right. It's first for me.
I
It's
I
my
love
first crossover.
Witchblade. So
I- So just letting you know, anybody if you're into Witchblade Vampirella, go ahead and get in that crossover, but prepare to be sick of me because I'm going to talk about it unnecessarily online. That's going to be like 15 videos on for nothing.
and you're gonna like it.
And you're gonna like it, right? But enough about my beautiful, wonderful, sexy life. Tashi, we have an amazing guest today, don't we?
That we do. And today's guest is an innovative creator, storyteller. She is a Cameroonian storyteller, which is great because I don't think we've ever been able to cross over into the African comic side of things because unfortunately, as is comics, it's mostly male dominated. So this is the first time I'm getting to have a woman, a black woman on here doing big things. All right.
Mhm.
But back in high school, she was looking for illustration books that had black and African characters because we all get to that point where we are like, hey, I would like to see some characters that look like me.
Mhm.
If we're reading comics, when we're reading manga, we it's like, oh, occasionally it's like, oh, I can find the prose, I can find some novels, but
Mhm.
I want to see it. And so when that became a struggle, she ended up getting into Marvel and finding Storm, which inspired her to get into martial arts, which is so cool, specifically
Mhm.
Aikido. And I think it was like 10 years of martial arts. And so was a martial artist, a stunt performer, um, and
We
then
love.
a clinical researcher in biotech. I love how many Black women in STEM make
Mhm.
the switch over to comic books.
Yep.
Like, I think we said this once. It's like there needs to be a study
Yes.
on the amount of Black women that go from STEM
To
right comic.
unique creative fields.
Right.
Absolutely
Like
comics.
I do need that study. I can't do that study.
No, I'm in fact not a
That
sociologist.
is
That's
that is not
not my
that's
skill set.
it's not in my realm, but I want that study. So somebody out there, if you are and if you're capable, I would love that study.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
specifically for black. I mean, there could be a broader one, but I need a subsection for black women in particular. Just letting y'all
Absolutely.
know. But then she got into creating her own comics where she wanted to reimagine historical narratives in educational content and using her own experiences to tell stories specifically that she wasn't seeing, which isn't that how we be? We're not seeing those
Mhm.
stories that have us in them. We want to see them. And so a lot of the time the best way is to create our own, which I believe she's, from what I've seen from the Kickstarter I backed, doing a great job. So I
Mhm.
want you all to welcome the creator of Songs of Sahara, Apathy.
Hello, hi everybody,
Hello. Thank you for
Hello.
coming.
having me.
Yeah. So I'm very excited for this project. I remember finding you on Facebook and just randomly, which happens to me a lot, and I'm happy that it does. And I just randomly
Mhm.
come across somebody, a black woman, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I make a comic," and I said, "Oh, do you?
Do you now?
Come on my show. We must talk about comics because that is what it's here for. Please." So I love that you were talking about your book, Songs of Sahara, and I was like, okay, that sounds so interesting. I'm here for it. I immediately went ahead and clicked that little remind me button on Kickstarter,
Thank,
Mhm.
and
thank
now
you.
it's live, and I have backed it.
Thank appreciate
So,
appreciate.
so I will be honest. To be fair, technically, this is supposed to be part of next season, but because the Kickstarter is going, I want to get this out while the Kickstarter is
Mhm.
still going.
Thank you.
So
Mhm.
this will be a special season finale instead for this season,
Thank you.
so that it's up while that Kickstarter is still going. So, all the stuff will be in the description, all the information will be at the end. So make sure y'all stick around so y'all can go back it. But I know I gave a little brief introduction. I would love for you to give your story, your version of events from your own mouth.
Well, thank you very much for such a warm welcome and introduction. I am a Cameroonian American, and my mom shared with me that part of her family is from African country Togo, and I'd spent quite a bit of time looking up history, culture, and things like that, trying to understand a little bit more about my Togolese heritage because I was born in Cameroon. I spent several years there before I moved to the United States. And so I'm pretty familiar with Cameroonian culture. I'm not as ingrained as I would like to be. So I'm doing this comprehensive study and self education about West and Central African culture. And it was in the deep dive that I found the story that I wanted to tell. But even that in itself started much sooner because I just remember thinking to myself, growing up in places, you learn more about European history or U.S. history more
Mm.
than you about the history of the place you're from. And so for a lot, and I imagine that has changed a little bit.
Uh-oh. Hold on.
Hold on one second. Yeah,
We
the
lost,
audio is a little.
we lost for a second. The audio said it went chop chop. Chop chop. Chop chop. I think. All right, say something.
Hello.
Okay, yeah. I was like, I think that was it.
Great. So it is my understanding that more people learn, especially kids in different schools across the continent, learn more about countries outside of where they are than they do about their own. And I
Mhm.
hope that's changed a lot. And so if it has, I definitely don't want to skim or skip over the progress that's been made. It just is not enough for me. I think
Yes.
that was something that really got to me. And I was like, well, that was not something I could control as a kid, but I'm an adult now. So there's something I can do about it. So I need to educate myself. I'd like to learn as much as possible. I'd like to understand more. And so I spent probably the last 13 years traveling the continent. Every single break that I would get, I would I would head over to a different place. So I wanted to go north, south, east, west, and central. Now, I've not been to all 54 countries. However, I've at the very least gotten a chance to explore each region, even just a little bit. And it was on a visit to Senegal to see my sister, where she took me to this like completely remote, out of the way museum on West African history. And the locals ran it, and they had all these artifacts from all over West Africa. And it was a museum specific to West African history. And it was on visiting this museum where I was like, oh my God, this is the story I want to tell. And I just kind of deep dove and spent some time learning from the people there, talking to them, and having a better understanding not only about their museum, but the way they collect all of their artifacts and the specific histories that I was not aware of. And I should also mention that I was a stunt performer for a few years after a 9-10 year career in martial arts. I'm also a filmmaker. I'm also an indie filmmaker. So I've done a lot of my own just independent short films and independent television. Living in San Diego, built up a community of people, supported each other's work, and they definitely showed up to support me in making some of the indie shows that I worked on. And through additional friendships and sisterhoods built, I got an opportunity on a mainstream show in New York with the showrunner, who wanted me to see what it was like to showrun at that level. Because up until that point, I'd been doing showrunning independently. And so she wanted me to just kind of see what that was like at the mainstream level, where it's millions and millions of dollars per episode of a show, where mine was hundreds or thousands of dollars per episode. So either way, that's kind of my background. I've always been a storyteller for as long as I can remember. I remember writing my first comic probably about 7 years old, and one of my uncles was visiting from the United States, and I was like, "Uncle, please take this to a publisher in America and ask them to publish it." He was like, And many years later, I found that same like paper, like I think I used tape to tape the pages together, and I found it on like in a cabinet at his house, and I was like, you know what? Thank you for not breaking my heart and just taking it. But I just remember hearing, there's no way that you're going to make a living doing that. And so I was like, okay, well, what am I going to do next? And then I was told, well, at least, you look nice, because we don't know that you're going to, and these are kids at school or some adults, passive aggression. Well, at least you look nice, you'll find somebody to marry you, because my God, your head is always in the clouds telling stories and fantasizing about something. And I just was like, I wasn't really paying enough attention to realize that I was being insulted. So it didn't really bother me. And, getting to high school and really hungering for stories with people that looked like me was so impactful, because I loved Greek mythology. I loved Norse mythology, like reading through all of those books. It was just so cool just seeing all these heroes. But I was like, how come the heroes are always over there? How come they're never over here where I'm from? Or even if it's, in the United States, how come they're never, I loved Cheetora from, from Thundercats. But Cheetora doesn't look anything. I thought she was the absolute coolest. I was like, man, she can run really fast, and she has this like amazing weapon that she wields as if she's breathing. Like, that is the coolest. And then I picked up X-Men, and I lost my mind, because seeing Storm was the kind of validation, and I cannot explain why. And I think especially when you're a kid and you're impressionable, seeing that kind of validation does something for you, where you're seeing this incredible person who is a dark-skinned Black woman, stunningly beautiful, extremely intelligent, very powerful, commands the room, is soft when she needs to be. Like, there were just all of these. I was just like, this is everything that I hope that, maybe when I grow up, I mean, obviously, not really with the powers, but those were the sorts of things that like really lifted me up. And I was like, it would be the absolute coolest thing to be able to write multiple characters like that, even if it's one kid who sees that and feels the way that I did seeing Storm for the first time. So I hope that gives a good foundation about where all of my motivation came from.
No, absolutely, because I could definitely relate as an Afro Caribbean who has a story about a girl who is Afro Caribbean, and like wanted to put some Caribbean culture in it, but she lives in America, and so I had to go like to my aunts and my uncles and my grandparents and stuff
Yeah.
to learn a lot more like about my own culture because even though I grew up here, and as much as I wanted to be, I wasn't gross growing up, so I understand that struggle and everything. So that's I already like just as the creator with your own personal story, you're connecting with the audience who might literally relate to what you're going through.
Yeah.
So already that's already cool before you even shown your book,
Yeah.
and that just makes people want to get the book even more, seeing you as the creator dealing with something that they're dealing with.
And to add on top of that, this past Comic-Con, and forgive me, I'm completely drawing a blank. There's this Black female illustrator who does illustrate Storm, and I got to meet her at Comic-Con, another moment where I completely lost my mind. And I'm going to look up her name to make sure that I mention it, because getting to meet her in person was really cool, because I know that she inspires so many.
Oh no.
Oh, that was so weird. I imagine she joined while she was. We don't have to take the music.
No.
You guys hear me?
No.
Can you hear me?
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
sorry.
Okay. I
The
was like,
music.
no.
All right, I think we're good.
Yeah.
Okay.
It was like they draw Storm they had like drawings of Storm.
No, she's one of the. I'm trying to find. She's one of the current illustrators for Storm with Marvel, and I cannot for the life of me. I literally have her stickers in in my room, and I can't think of it right at Afua.
Okay, I
Um,
was say I should know this. Yes,
yeah, her
Afua
name is Afua.
is an
Um,
amazing artist. She's an amazing artist.
yeah. So like her name just popped up. Like I was trying to like find it, and yeah, Afua Richardson. And I got to meet her at Comic Con, Dragon Con last year.
Ooh.
Yeah, she is amazing. I've met her and she is the sweetest person.
She's really kind.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So I know, of course, you're Cameroonian. Uh, your father grew up in Nigeria for a bit, and a lot of your family is in Nigeria.
Mhm.
How much influence did they have over your story?
I would say, because so much of my story is a celebration of Pan-Africanism, even though it's very, very specific. So it's inspired by a legend that is unique to what is present day Mali. At the time, it was known as the Soninke people were the ones who had the Ouagadougou Empire. They were known as the Ghanas, which many people know as the name of the country today, but at the time in the 13th century or 12th and 13th century West Africa, Ghana was a title. Ghana was a title for warlords. So if you were a Ghana, you were a warlord. And so the Soninke Ganas, or the Soninke warlords, were trying desperately to hold on to their empire, which was waning. And this was at the end of the Ghana Empire and the rise of the Malian Empire. So my story takes place in that intersection and fictionalizes how the Ouagadougou Empire ended and how the Mali Empire began. So I'm weaving in lore from that region, from the Dogon or the Bandiagara encampment with the Dogon people in Mali. I'm putting in, but the fictional world that I'm building out includes several different kingdoms that are inspired by real places with real cultures, and generalizes for the sake of focusing on the story being told, but represents people from different parts. So that does include superimposing Cameroonian landscapes, because Cameroon is known as Africa in miniature. Every terrain you can find on the continent of Africa, you can find in this one little, like, I want not latchkey, but it's a country that's kind of like on the hook of the continent, right as you're about to go from west into Central Africa, and it's like on the coast. So it has like desert in the far north, and as you come down it becomes more grass fields, and then as you come down it becomes more equatorial. And so every terrain that you have, so I'm using kind of as a unifier and specificity of culture. But there's one kingdom that's inspired by Nigeria, but I'm going to focus more on the Edo people, because the rich it's just I'm just so fascinated by and in awe of the variety, the diversity within Black culture in the diaspora and on the continent. And so I'm using and superimposing lore specifically from West Africa into the story and weaving it in. And then I'll, cite my sources on the back, so that if people want to know where, like, what books was I reading when I was making this, what can they, where can they go look for their own research. And the story itself is inspired by Sunjata Keita, who was known as the Lion King of Mali. That was the first Lion King before Disney Disneyfied, but he is known throughout history as the Lion King of Mali, and the founder of the Malian Empire and the Kurukan Fuga, one of the first Bill of Rights on the continent, which was focused on humanity and how to essentially govern in a humane way. So it's a popular story in certain parts of the continent, but too many people are not familiar. Everyone knows of his great grand nephew, Mansa Musa, because he is very famously known as he's very famously known as the wealthiest person to ever have existed. And I think that that's an incredible story to tell. But then I remember just thinking to myself, but that's not where the real tea is. Like the real, I think that is a fascinating story. But if there was a way to really give that story context, there would be more understanding of why that was not a fluke. It was not a fluke. It was not by accident. It was not because, he just happened to be super lucky. There was a lot of legacy that went into that. There was a lot of planning that went into that. And I learned that for a lot of Malians, they actually keep him out of the historical poems of the griots, because they were really upset with him for essentially revealing so much of the country's wealth and spending it, going broke, while destabilizing other countries on his Hajj to Mecca, destabilizing Egypt's economy with how much gold he was giving away, and also not realizing the horrible time just across the sea and what was happening in Europe at the time. If you go to the north of Morocco, you can stand on the edge of there's a city, and it escapes me at the moment. You can see Spain from Morocco. There are places on the Mediterranean that are North African. So we have to remember that there are certain parts of the continent that were part of the Roman Empire much later, but it was just across the sea. So if you have only been trading with people across gold trade routes, and you stay in the West, and then you only trade for the people who know how to venture through through the very dangerous desert, and they only get the ends of certain trade. You can keep certain things to yourself, but once you go and you expose all of that to an environment where people are barely able to stay alive, because the Dark Ages were happening in the middle in Europe at the time when Mansa Musa was taking his Hajj. Even though Timbuktu existed with the university and all of this stuff that was available, they were going through it. And I try to use context clues. I've been told often, if you are going to a place where you're worried about making sure you hold on to whatever valuables you have, don't go showing off. And it's not to disrespect the legacy of someone who was amazing. It's to add a little bit of context to humanize that person. Because when we edify someone, we start to see them not as a person, but more as a figure, almost a deity. And he was a person. And we have to think about how people react when they want what you have.
Yeah. You should be giving lectures somewhere. You're actually captivating. But I
Absolutely.
do have to ask, this book is hand painted.
It is.
What made you make that decision? And was it complicated to get done?
Yes. And what made me make that decision was I was going to write the book in prose. It was just going to be prose. And I was like, this will be simple. I'll just write my book. I'll print it and sell it and see who was interested in buying it. And I thought to myself how difficult it was to communicate with people when I was sharing about some of it. Because the more I learn, the more excited I get about it. The more I learn, the more I want to learn it. And then I'm like, man, I want to talk to people about this because this is insane. It's amazing. And I never knew, like, even something as simple or as a tiny detail like Ghana, and just knowing that that was a title for a warlord that we now know was the chosen name for the modern day country.
Mm-hmm.
And I remember talking to a friend, and we were trying to figure out, when horses became a part of the culture in West Africa. And part of the argument was, well, it's so equatorial in certain areas that horses wouldn't survive, all the mosquitoes and all these things. Come to find out, horse for horse, sword for sword, the advancement on the continent at the time was so is something that, unfortunately, because of a lot of conditioning, a lot of people would find hard to believe. For example, if I told you I was writing a story about medieval England, you'd have some kind of idea what that would look like. If I told you I was writing a story about medieval Germany or Norway, it might not be exact, but you'd have a clue about where I was going. Sometimes all you need to see is an image, and then you'd have an idea of the story that someone's trying to tell. And I'm like, if I try to tell that story, I would be asking the people I'm hoping to connect with to do so much extra work that it would distract from the story I'm trying to tell. What if I did all the research for what did swords look like at the time? What kind of horses were being used? In what environments? What did the homes look like at the time? Because that's another thing, is when people are dismissing or making fun of accomplishment from that part of the world, they're like, oh, they don't really have anything. And they barely wear clothes, and or maybe they live in trees. I've heard all manner of things, which I know personally is not the case. I grew up in Cameroon. I've seen homes that were built with intention, and the architecture is so old, and communities come together to restore routinely. And in Cameroon alone, there are over 200 languages, not dialects, because there's so many different kinds of people, and each group of people has a different culture. And from the way that people have their buildings, all of those things are so fascinating, and they're so beautiful, and they're so intricate, that I just thought, wouldn't it be insane to be able to draw from that in inspiration? When I think about learning about the Benin Wall in Nigeria, and learning that that is a marvel as architecturally impressive or profound as the Great Wall of China, and it's right there in West Africa. And I did not know about it until last year.
Gotcha.
Most of it has been destroyed over time, but those sorts of things I felt like would be better on display in craftsmanship. And so I found, I didn't find, but I was introduced to, in my opinion, one of the most insane collaborators I've ever had. Like, we work so well together. He's also Cameroonian American, as it happens. And we just work really, really well together. I do my creative briefs with the historical references and the inspiration, and then he just takes it away. He went to SCAD for building or making graphic novels. And so he does the pencils and the letters, and he did the cover for the book. He did the illustration. Someone else did the cover design, but he did the illustration for the book, and he's the art lead or the artistic director on the project. So we have someone who's doing the inks and the shadows, someone who does the flats, and someone who does the colors and effects. And we're a full team. That's why our Kickstarter is at $30,000. I put in $20,000 of my own money to get to this point. And so to answer your question, I thought that it would be so much more impactful, uplifting, and fun to be able to pull all these real references to tell a fictionalized historical adventure.
And there's clearly so much passion behind this project, just from the level of intricate research that you've done in preparation for releasing this book. And I'm very excited to see a bibliography in the back of a comic book. I cannot tell you, there's something about that just really soothes my nerdy brain. So I'm very excited for that alone. But I do have to ask, in doing research across the continent of Africa, of course, exploring more about your own heritage, and as well as the many different heritages that are a part of that continent. Why specifically this story? What was it about the story that you're telling in Songs of Sahara that made you go, no, I have to tell this one right here?
That's a multi-factor response to that one. I am a geek through and through, and especially for I hyper focus. I'm one of the I'm not a geeky about everything, but the things that I am, I will tell you the most useless information. And I remember years ago being sick and watching the first season of Game of Thrones, and coming to the end of it, I didn't start watching it, weekly. I saw it after the first season had already come out, and I got to the end, and I was so devastated that there was nothing more to watch. I was like, this is, in my opinion, one of the best written stories I have ever seen, and told in a way that is so unique and so cool. I loved Harry Potter, hyperfixated on that. I really enjoyed Lord of the Rings, not as much as I did Harry Potter or Game of Thrones. Lord of the Rings was a little bit different for me, but after just complaining on social media, someone was like, it's a book, right? Like A Song of Ice and Fire is a book, and you don't have to wait for the show to come out. You can just go read. I was like, wait, what? So I went and got all the books that are out and read them, and still, waited for each season with anticipation, obsessed over watching every single YouTube video available of George R.R. Martin, and just like fascinated, like, how did you come up with this like brilliance, and hearing him say how he had been obsessed with Tolkien. But then there were all of these stories that would come out that just felt like imitations of Tolkien's work, and it was an elf this or an elf that, and it just felt like some sort of mock up or regurgitation of trying to do the same thing. And while he was obsessed with those stories as well, he was like, I want to tell an epic, but I want to do it in a way that's unique to me. That's like, that kind of has my brand. He didn't say brand, but he just said that was specific, that is specific to me. I want to tell an epic at that scale. I just want to do it the way that only I could do it. And I heard him say that, and I was like, oh, that's what I need to do. Like that's what I want. Like I don't want to be Tolkien. I don't want to be George R. R. Martin, and I don't want to be anyone else. I want to be myself. But I do. The reason I was so obsessed is because I felt like there was a story like that in me, and that I wanted to get out. And it was obsessively watching his interviews that led me to that. And I knew what I want to tell an epic, but I don't want to be George Martin. I don't want to be Tolkien. I just thought, well, I guess I will keep looking until that story finds me, or I find that story. And it was in that museum in Senegal where I learned more about the Lion King of Mali. I learned more about Sunjata Keita, the establishing Mansa of the Empire of Mali, where I thought, this is my story. And I know that there is such a huge fascination of Mansa Musa. And I know that that is a great reference point for people, and that this story is the context that happens before he came into prominence. He wasn't even meant to be the Mansa at the time. His cousin was said to, Abubakar, was said to have taken an expedition on ships that never returned, which we later found out, or it has been supposed that he landed in the Americas. And we know that because there are almost exact replicas of buildings that look like they're from West Africa that were redone in Central and in some parts of North America. So depending on where some of these sources are cited, there's a lot of argument around that. But then sometimes I ask myself, well, why? What do people have to gain by insisting that Africans had nothing to contribute to civilization, art, the world, or positive influence? There's a lot that people have to gain from that. It makes it easier to dehumanize people. It makes it easier to continue to loot and treat people in a way that's inhumane when you can convince the world that they're not worth anything. And part of what I would hope comes out of this is a reminder, because I'm not trying to prove anything to anyone. I think I've gotten to a place in my life where I'm not really interested in proving anything to anyone. What I'm hoping comes out of this is that there's such a reminder that people didn't even know they were looking for. Or maybe they did, I don't know. But my hope is to be able to connect with people in a way that makes them feel like, man, it's not that I was never connected to my heritage. I didn't see all the ways that I am that are right here. And I'll give you an example that we have in the art that's actually available on the Kickstarter page right now. I remember moving to the United States and hearing someone say, oh, I'm pouring one out for the homie that didn't make it. And I'm sitting there, I'm like, first of all, they're talking so fast. I don't understand this American accent, even though I have one now. I was like, what is it? I asked someone, I was like, hey, what is it they're saying? They're like, pouring one for the homie that didn't make it. And I'm like, what does that mean? They're like, well, if like your friend couldn't make it to something, it's like you're remembering. I was like, oh, you mean like a libation? And what I started to realize because I've lived here most of my life, what I started to realize is that there are so many pieces of culture and pieces of inheritance that are sprinkled through or never stamped out. It's just that the name of what it is not what it used to be, but the act, the things that people do. I started to see that. I saw that in the Caribbean. I went to Jamaica for the first time here, and I was like, oh wait. I was like, that looks like my uncle. That looks like my grandfather. That looks like my auntie. I was with my sister, and completely, I felt like I just went back to Cameroon. The only difference was the color of the ocean, where we have sand beaches in most parts, where the water here was blue. And I was like, so it's things like that, where libations are, depending on what part of the continent you're from, are this like ceremony where you just remember the people that came before you, or you remember the good ancestors. My mom says very specifically, not the bad ones. Remember the people who had sense, the good ones who, and you remember them calling on them to protect you and all of those things. I went to Louisiana and they were like, okay, for the first time. And they were like, oh, let's go see a voodoo store. And I was like, ooh, voodoo, creepy, I guess, because that's what I kept hearing. And I walked in and I was like, this looks like the market where I grew up. I was like, where is the witchcraft? I was lost because I walked in and I felt like I walked into a market in my country. And it's like the dolls or the artifacts, the pieces of art, they all look like things that were normal to me, but everybody else was calling witchcraft. And I'm like, huh. Because what I was walking in expecting and what I experienced, there was a huge disconnect because I'm like, this feels familiar, but everybody else here is calling it witchcraft. And so it's things like that that I want to call to attention. And I'm not going to be preachy. I'm presenting these things as just the things that happen because they were part of people's lives and they still are. This is not going to be and this is called a libation, and then like, it's just integrate all these things are between the lore is just going to be integrated into the storytelling, et cetera, et cetera. I will yap for days, so I'll just keep it there.
No, you're truly a captivating speaker. So I was locked in. I was locked in. I do think it's an interesting thing that you call out about how we as Black people diasporically are so connected to the motherland in ways that we have truly no idea. You were talking about libations, like pouring out one out for the homies. I definitely have a different connotation of it. I know there's like remembering, but it's typically the way I was taught was like in particularly for like gang situations or men who have specifically lived a rough life. If they've lost someone to gun violence or they've lost someone to like severe violence, we pour one out for the homies because they didn't make it out of our tough situation. But I don't really know that life. That's just how I picked it up from movies. I'll be honest. I will be honest. But something that is specific to me as somebody from the South is we have a lot of like what I call kitchen myths. So like I have vivid memories and of if I sweep someone's feet with the broom, my grandmother and my mom would snatch the broom, they spit on it, and then they throw salt over their shoulder. And I'm like, why are we doing this? This is very unnecessary. It was an accident. Come to find out that is a tradition or something that is carried home from the motherland. As I was mentioned that to an African coworker of mine way back when, she was like, "Oh, I know what that is." And I was just like, "But what is it?" She didn't tell me. I don't know why she would do that to me. I don't know why she would tell that me. But just there's so many small traditions, just like leaving the light on at night. I know a lot of Black households. There's one light in the house that got to stay on. We don't know why, but we got to keep that light on. It's the kitchen light or maybe the laundry room light.
It's usually or above the stove or something like that.
Above the stove. We gotta keep that one light on. And I think it's
nice.
Oh yes. So I think it's beautiful that we are having we have more stories from African storytellers that now don't just necessarily focus on the mythos of Africa, because I think African mythos is beautiful, but also just like genuine historical fiction, which can be a way to a learning vessel for a lot of people as they're learning about history. Maybe a little bit fictionalized, but they'll be able to pull something from it and have some stories that feel real. So I'm incredibly excited for your project. Of course, in addition to the hand painted edition, because hand painting is amazing.
Yeah.
In addition to all the other research, I think this project is going to shape out to be something incredibly special. My last question for you is, with all the many unique decisions that you've made in comic books, I'm sure they don't feel very unique to you because this is just your way of storytelling. But I will say, from my experience in comic books, the decisions that you make are very unique and they're very labor intensive. Some people within who are new to the space, or some people who are storytellers, oftentimes get really afraid to take big leaps in storytelling. From you, as someone who is new to comic books, what would you say to folks within the comic book space or people who are interested in storytelling through comics? What would you tell them to or some advice that you would provide to help them take more risk in their storytelling?
Start with low stakes, right? So while this will be my first official effort to produce a comic book on my own, this is not my first story. This is not my first production. This is not my first effort to get a story from idea to complete, right? So I've had a lot of practice. I've had a lot of failure, which, to be fair, I do not really see as failure because those were lessons that helped me move forward and then take all the lessons I learned from things not working in those situations, and then applying them to the next one and then the next one and then the next one. And I would say that, you know, try as much as possible to learn as much as possible and to build yourself up as much as possible without too much attention on yourself so that you can really learn how to be confident in the work that you're doing, because there'll be so many people who are going to have opinions. There are going to be so many people who might see something that you're doing and realize that, hey, wow, that person might be going somewhere with that, and then try to sell you on an idea of how great they would be of an addition to what you're doing, and then try to take it over, especially if you're a woman. Um, and because oftentimes we're conditioned to be agreeable, we're conditioned to, you know, collaborate, we have to trust our instincts. You have to get to a place where you're confident enough in yourself, you are confident enough in your story, that you know that whatever it is that you're doing is yours. It is not, you know, whichever expert you bring on board. It is not, I think, yes, it is extremely important to be an excellent collaborator, but there's a difference between being collaborative and being a doormat. And it is going to be really important for you to know that you know what you're talking about. It is your story, and that this will not happen unless you make it happen. It doesn't have to be the most expensive production that ever made it, but get as much constructive criticism as you possibly can. Constructive criticism shouldn't discourage you. It should encourage you to want to grow. At least that's my humble opinion. Get as much constructive criticism as you possibly can. Be open to learning. Be open to being wrong. And being wrong doesn't mean you are wrong or you're a bad person. It just means maybe there's a gap in the way you were. Maybe there's a gap in perspective, or maybe there's information you didn't have before. You might change your opinion right after that. But as far as risk is concerned, I really think it depends on the audience. I think for women in general, we're not encouraged a whole lot to take risks. I have a balanced opinion about that. I think that you know the best when it's time to take yours, and it's never going to not be scary. But when the time comes for you to jump, you're going to know it's time and you need to jump.
So,
Absolutely. That's some amazing advice
Thanks.
for sure.
I would say I feel like that really crossed over into my usual last question, which is usually just advice, or encouragement. I think that hit the nail for that, so I don't even need it now. Uh,
I'm sorry to steal your thunder.
we're good. It was perfect. It worked out amazingly. Um, what I will do real quick is we're going to go into our comic book slash graphic novel recommendations of
Okay.
the episode this week. Um, hadn't gotten to do it yet, so I'm going to go ahead. My recommendation for this week is going to be Wash Day Diaries by Jamila Browser. Um, I recently did a reread so that I could do a write up for the website, and I was just like, oh man, this is so good.
So good.
So if
Yes.
you somehow haven't gotten to read Wash Day Diaries yet, please give it a read. It is Black women experience.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
It is. It is
I'm
so
gonna write that
good.
Wash Day Diaries.
By Jamila. It's actually on the. It should be on this side of my shelf, but it is not. Um. Yes. Because I put it with. I don't know why. It's with my pink books. I recently redid my bookshelf, so it's with my pink books. Don't don't judge me. I have a
You
whole
organized your
thing.
stuff. Good.
I did, because I have a whole. This whole shelf is dedicated to Black indie publishers. So I'm trying to get there.
You've been
My
working.
book recommendation, so I could do this.
Hey.
My book recommendation is Dark Blood. It
Oh,
is written by, yeah. It is written by Latoya Morgan, who has apparently worked in television and film first before she worked in comics. This right here
We
is
look good.
tea. Is tea. I will give you a quick synopsis. It is about a black pilot who fought in World War II. He came back home. He tried to take care of his family during Jim Crow civil rights era, and he has awful PTSD. He just trying to make it home to his baby and his wife. He get stopped by the police. He ends up having a unique encounter, and then afterwards that man is on the run, in some mess, and all he wanted to do was take care of his family. It's very good. It is that specific kind of like historical fiction. So if you get the opportunity to read this young lady's comic books, which you should, this is definitely in the same vein of historical fiction. It is just based in the Jim Crow South. If you like science fiction, horror, which are some of my favorite things, you're gonna like this one right here.
Oh yeah, let me go ahead and got that when you come up here. Um,
Absolutely. I will bring it to you.
yeah, I do find it also amazing how it's not as shocking in these cases, but there are a lot of people who started off in film
Hmm.
who end up it maybe even just a one off sometimes will write a graphic novel real quick and then they're just like, all right, I did it.
Right.
I'm out. Like wait,
Song
come back.
of the Sahara is a trilogy, and each book in the trilogy has 4 parts. So right now, and yeah, so this is part 1 of 4 for book 1. So book 1 is called The Serpent in the Sand. What our Kickstarter is working on right now is for part 1 of The Serpent in the Sand. The epic, the series is called Songs of the Sahara, but this book is called The Serpent in the Sand, part.
Gotcha.
And the trilogy, because the first part is around what Jata's life was like the things that are coming for him right now, and it essentially covers from when he was like, we see his normal and what his life was like in his father's court before he gets thrust into this like epic adventure. So that's kind of what book 1 is. Book 2 is when he's like on his journey, and he's going through it, and he must become the warrior that ends up saving his people. And there's a whole the myth, the actual story that's sung in the poems of griot. It's called Song of the Sahara because oral history is how the story was, the original story has been passed down, that inspires my fiction story. So it's from the songs of griot that I got my inspiration, which is why it's called Song of the Sahara. And so part 2 is where we see the main character Jata go from this, the way he's described in the poems is kind of disrespectful. They're like, oh, he's weak, he has weak bones, he can't walk, and he has to become this formidable warrior that is able to defeat a sorcerer king. And then the third book is where we see him actually become an emperor. So this is not a one-off. This is there are
Oh, this
12
is exciting.
books.
Now I'm glad you're staying. I didn't realize it was 12. I misunderstood and thought it was 3. So 12, thank you. Speaking of, by the way, please go ahead and let everybody know where they can find you, where they can get this book uh,
Mm-hmm.
right now, by the way.
So I am Eppleseed. That's EPLLESEED on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook. I'm Episi Latumbe, and and our website is www.songsofthesahara.com, where you can get all of the information. And at each point, each place, you can find the link to our Kickstarter. So on the website, every link will lead you to our Kickstarter. On Instagram, it's in my link tree, the link in my bio, where you could go directly to the Kickstarter. Same thing on TikTok. And on Facebook, I'm just constantly, across all my social media platforms, I post almost daily. And as soon as this weekend, I'm going to start posting even more often. and trying to get as many people to back this project as possible. Because, you know, I was telling Natasha earlier on, there are people scamming out here trying to figure out how they can out of people who are running their Kickstarter platforms. And this is my first campaign. So there's a lot that I'm learning on the go and freaking out because I need to get this made. And I know that no matter what happens, I'm going to get this made. So, yeah.
You
So,
absolutely got this. Yes, definitely go ahead and support Songs of the Sahara, specifically part 1, The Serpent in the Sand, on Kickstarter. It needs to be funded. It looks like it's about a little under halfway there, so
with
come on.
almost 30 days, 27 days left right
About
now.
Yeah,
Record this. Like,
Yeah.
you got this. I
yeah. And as I was
no
saying,
worries.
the art director, Alex Lene, is going to be at MomoCon. A poster, and he's going to have a QR code where people can, you know, they can go up, they can touch him, they can see some of the art that's already out there, and he's going to have a QR code where people can go onto the Kickstarter and back the project. So he's going to be at MomoCon, so please go say hi to him, Alex Lene. Comic
Excited.
on Instagram.
There y'all go. See, go back it. Go find him a moment. I'll be there too. So I'm gonna find him just because I need to see what he got. But Ty, you're up.
Oh, oh yeah. Hi, I'm Ty. I go by Black and Culture Online. That's BLAQUE, the letter N, KULTURE. I like to make content about comics, manga, animation, and fandom because I like to think that I'm your favorite nerd otaku culture expert. I occasionally make horror content because I'm a spooky bitch. I also make nostalgic media content because I'm an old one. And if any of that interests you, I also do amazing commentary on fandom. I'm like on a roll on Instagram. You should definitely follow me everywhere. Again, that's BLAQUE, the letter N, KULTURE. You can Google me. I will pop up.
Yes, and she's been doing a great job with this educational content lately. It is beautiful. It is aesthetic. It is educational. Like,
Don't gas me up too much. I'll start to cry.
if only you guys could see her Canva. It is like just she's so orderly behind the scenes. I tell you. But I am your host, Natasha. I am the comic creator and the creator of this show and this platform. On this channel, you can also find other videos, mostly video essays about Black comics, specifically Black women in comics, whether that's the creators or the characters. I recently released 2 different videos on Storm, one about how she falls into stereotypes, and one about how her love story with T'Challa is not the Black love story that we deserve. I love Storm, despite what people in the comments want to think because of the video. I know how to criticize things that I love, even if you don't. So go ahead and subscribe. Check those videos out. There's more coming soon. If I get back on it, make sure you follow Melanin Minds 24 on Instagram, where I post other stuff, mostly stuff reminding you about the YouTube videos. And that is it. So remember, as I always say, a small spark can lead to a huge blaze, and we will see you guys on the next episode. Bye.
Bye.